In Q1, we added about 65 top-line metrics. But if you include, things like percentage growth, penetration for each metric, it's going to be a lot more.
They alternatively saw their e-commerce sales and their D2C sales grow tremendously. And that's because they were utilizing their own online channels.
Users spent nearly 39 minutes a day on the platform, but it's 4 more minutes than the average Facebook user does.
Hey gang, it's Tuesday, April 27th. Shalene, Cindy and Oscar, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, a new marketer podcast made possible by Newstar. I'm Marcus, and today I'm joined by a gang of forecasting people. We have with us lots of directors. We have our Senior Director of Forecasting, it's Shalene Chum.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Shalene. So Shalene's been hiding from me for at least 2 years. We just got her back on the show. I found where she was hiding. We're also joined by 2 other directors of forecasting. One of them is called Cindy Lou.
Hey.
And the other one goes by Oscar Orozco.
Hi, Marcus. Happy to be here.
Hello there. Hello. So, thanks for joining me, folks. Today's fact. Your nostrils work one at a time. I was blown away with this because I've thought that for a while. And I thought one of them, maybe there was something wrong with me, but that's apparently how it's supposed to work. When we breathe in and out of our nose during the day, one nostril does most of the work at a time, with the duties of switching every several hours. This nasal cycle, as it's called, is dictated by the same autonomic nervous system that regulates heart rate, digestion, and other unconscious functions. And is the reason why, when our nose gets stuffed up, it does so one nostril at a time. I have always wondered this. Like when you've got a cold and you're trying to breathe, and I've always thought, why isn't one working? Is it broken? Do you guys, we've talking allergies beforehand. Are we dealing with this right now?
Yeah, my allergies are off the wall right now.
But are you doing one at a time as well?
Okay, I do believe this fact. I mean, it has to be true.
Of course. Wait, are you questioning?
I'm not so
You're
sure
questioning the
about
fact
that
of the
one.
day,
No,
Cindy.
I'm not questioning it. It's
I'm
100%
questioning
true. One of them is always clogged.
That's true. That's how it goes. It's the worst. Oscar, do you say you're questioning it, mate?
I said I'm questioning it. Yeah, that sounds a little bit suspect. So
Suspect. Trust a Bulls fan. Why? Who invited? These are facts. These are absolutely true. I'm not going to give you my sources because they're secret. Today's real topic is new forecasting metrics that help us predict the future. So, the forecasting crew are constantly updating our existing metrics that we forecast. Things like US digital ad spending, time spent with media in the UK, social networking users in Asia Pacific. There are so many different things that we cover. Shalene, what's the total number of metrics that we, and by we I mean you guys, forecast?
I don't have the official count for you because we have added so many in the past year and even in the past month. But it has to be over 1,000, like thousands of metrics.
Okay. I think there's millions. I think she's selling them short, but there are a lot. There are definitely a lot. And you guys added a ton just in Q1. How many did we add in Q1?
In Q1, we added about 65 top-line metrics. But if you include, things like percentage growth, penetration for each metric, it's going to be a lot more.
Right. So if you've got something like, we're going to be talking today about TikTok users, you could have TikTok users, millions number, how many millions of TikTok users are there, but also what is the percentage growth over time, how many TikTok users are there as a share of the population, as a share of internet users, what share of them are there as a share of social network users in total, lots of different ways to cut it, 65 top line, times that by however many ways you can cut it, and there are billions. That's too many, but there are a lot. So, how do we decide which metrics to break out, Shalene?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you asked because we don't get to talk about our process of planning very often. And there's definitely some science to it. So we look at 3 main things. One is data on where the most popular search items are, what they are on our platform, direct requests from clients or through the account managers or through the client chat system, and the performance of our existing forecasts. So we look at all these 3 things, and then we look at whether there's enough data to create a forecast in the first place. And if there is, and if there's significant interest, we embark on a forecast.
Okay.
So the forecast that Cindy and Oscar will be discussing today were all highly searched topics on our site, and we're very excited to be able to cover that for our clients.
I was hoping you were going to say magic 8 ball. We come up with a topic, we shake it up, and if it says come back again later, then we don't do it. But apparently there's more to it. Well, there's a lot that you did, a lot that you broke out, and we wanted to zoom in and focus on a couple today, a couple of the just very particularly interesting ones. And so today we're covering D2C e-commerce sales. We're going to talk a little bit about TikTok users by age, by gender, and TikTok time spent as well. And then we'll talk a bit more later on in the show about all the other ones that you broke out and list out some of those ones that if you are a subscriber, you can go and check out right this second. But we'll start with D2C e-commerce sales. Cindy, I want to talk to you about this one because you've worked on these numbers a little bit. What do we mean here? What does D2C e-commerce sales cover?
Yeah, so when we are referring to direct-to-consumer e-commerce sales, we are really referring to this as a sales channel, and that channel can really be used by any type of brand. So basically, it refers to any brand who sells their products directly to consumers without going through a middleman. So without going through a middleman like retailers. This sales channel isn't really a new concept, but over the past decade, what has been new has been the rise in the number of digitally native brands. So D2C brand startups like Warby Parker and Casper, who really were incepted online and started with online distribution. And so oftentimes when people refer to D2C e-commerce, sometimes it's synonymous with D2C brands. However, when we broke out this metric, we actually broke it out within two types of brands. So we have an overall D2C e-commerce sales, and then we broke it down within just digitally native brands and then also established brands. Established brands are brands like Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, so brands who produce and create their own products, and then they may or may not sell their products through traditional like wholesale partnerships with retailers, but then also they have their own direct channels, like their own offline stores, or in our case, what we're focused on is their e-commerce sites.
Okay, so D2C e-commerce sales, top line, and then we've got traditional brands. We've got Nike, as you said, Adidas, however you say that, and then also the D2C brands, which are the Caspers, the Warby Parkers of the world as well.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. And so give me a couple of interesting numbers here or interesting things that we found when we were breaking out these metrics.
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons why we really wanted to push this forecast out and why it became particularly important last year was that having a D2C strategy was almost a must-have during the pandemic. With like so many retailers being closed, a lot of supply chains being disrupted, a lot of brands, had to mitigate their sales losses by using their own channels. So for example, Nike, really early on in the pandemic saw their retail sales fall, but they alternatively saw their e-commerce sales and their D2C sales grow tremendously. Mm-hmm. And that's because they were utilizing their own online channels. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen a lot of established brands like Nike, but then also CPG brands that you wouldn't think of when you think of e-commerce, but like PepsiCo, for example, they launched 2 D2C websites last year during the pandemic. Yep. Because they recognized that consumers were shifting a lot of their consumption and their snacking at home and wanted to really capitalize on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how many chips can you buy at once?
Right. No, I know. I mean, I don't know who
just chips.
Orders online, but I mean, it's interesting. You can order like top selling PepsiCo brands in a bundle for like, I think $30 a month maybe. And so, yeah, I mean, we are spending all of our time at home and snacking a lot. Yeah. So, and if you have a family, it adds up.
Right. Yeah. I've just never thought, that's the thing, it's the family thing. I've never thought to myself, I need 100 packets of Lay's immediately direct.
Right, but I mean, remember in the office, our snack
exactly.
room was always stocked.
There are a lot of instances where someone may want that, and going D2C seems to be relatively popular. So, I mean, $77 billion in D2C e-commerce sales last year. No, 2019, sorry. Then last year, That went from 77 to 111 billion. That's a 46% growth, accounting for 14% of retail e-commerce sales with D2C. 14% last year, and 2% of all retail sales with D2C e-commerce sales. That was last year. Cindy, it does seem like that those numbers are coming back down to earth, though. That growth goes from 46% to 16% this year, and then 16% in a couple of years as well. What's behind that?
Yeah, so this year and moving forward, we do have growth rates falling back down to, to more normal levels. We're seeing that across our overall e-commerce channel as well. However, these sales at D2C and this sales channel specifically is still growing faster than the overall market. Mm-hmm. So we will continue to see it growing faster across the overall channel.
Yeah. Oscar, let's come to you, mate, because one of the things that you've been working on is time spent, and time spent with TikTok, which was a huge story last year. First of all, let's talk about what we mean by time spent, and then I want to talk to you about some of the metrics.
Yeah, sounds great. So, first starting with TikTok, I'd like to make clear kind of what we count as a user. Yeah. So it would be anyone who accesses their account. So we wouldn't count people who are, because I think a lot of us have been receiving like videos from friends via, chat apps or even other socials. Unless you're, logged in, we would not count that person as a user. But with the time spent figures, it includes all time spent, regardless of multitasking. So there could be people who are kind of passively, swiping through videos, or just fully, focused on videos, like we see a lot of young Gen Zers doing. And again, it has to include those people who have an account on any device as well.
Okay, and so we've got we broke out TikTok and Twitter as well. So let's go through TikTok first. How long are people spending with TikTok these days?
Yeah, I mean, the TikTok stories has been fascinating. We know about the user growth, and what we now estimate was in 2020, TikTok users spent nearly 39 minutes a day on the platform, but it's 4 more minutes than the average Facebook user does, which Facebook has been the leading sort of engaged platform for years now. So TikTok surpassed Facebook. We estimate that will be the case into our forecast years. We go up to 2023. So it's number 1 now, which is incredible. But we have to keep in mind, essentially all the content on TikTok is video. Of course, video, people are a little bit more engaged. It takes longer to sort of scroll through these. TikTok is a social entertainment platform. It's different than any of the other platforms are, right? Which might be a little bit more about keeping in touch with family and friends and reading up on news. So right. The TikTok story is fascinating.
So TikTok overtook Facebook last year, you said?
Last year, yes, in 2020.
Okay, and what happens this year? Does that do they switch back because we're kind of getting back to whatever normal means, or is TikTok now going to stay out in front?
It stays out in front. That's the story that we see for the next sort of 2 years, because we're 2021 to 2023. It stays out in front by about 3 to 4 minutes above Facebook.
But it's not continuing to grow, is it? It's kind of...
So they're all the platforms are losing a little bit of time spent this year. Not a ton. Much of this behavior is completely sticky. I mean, we just have seen this acceleration to social platforms with people sort of pivoting to socials for more of their free time. And some of it is dropped. I mean, to give you exact numbers, about 5% of a decline is what we're estimating for this year in time spent. So a couple of minutes, and then about close to 3% in 2022. So a few minutes.
But still above pre-pandemic numbers. Basically went from like 27 minutes up to about 39 minutes. So it shot up by 12 minutes last year. Will come down by a couple over the next few years, but still way above where we were before the pandemic happened.
And a quick thing, I didn't say this, we are only looking at adults. That's with all of these numbers for our time spent, right? So so if we were to include kids, if this number would be much higher.
10 hours a day?
Yeah, oh gosh, yes. At
Little
least.
people are the worst, man.
But it does show that adults are increasingly driving time on there. They're enjoying it as well. I mean, who doesn't enjoy these silly videos?
Kids. Get out in the yard. Do some yard work. Hell's going on? What about Twitter? How much time are people spending using Twitter last year, this year, all the years.
Yeah. The Twitter story is also very, very interesting. I was taking a look at these numbers before coming onto the podcast. We had the numbers in about 23, 22 minutes a day for many years, from 2013 on to 2018. We have seen strong years in 2019 and the pandemic year for Twitter. So it was up 6.5 minutes to 32.5 minutes in 2020. So it was the third most engaging platform across users. It wasn't all the pandemic. I mean, let's remember it was an election year. Of course, there was a lot of talk about social injustice, vaccine rollouts, the pandemic itself. So very, very strong year for Twitter. As I said, 32.5 minutes a day in 2020.
And you said the third most. So last year it went TikTok, Facebook, Twitter in terms of time spent.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it will lose, we have the declines of 6.6% this year in 2021. So it does lose a little bit more than what I said for TikTok, for example. But we expect some sort of rebound in 2022 with, the midterm elections. And we expect, things like the World Cup and things like that always seem to drive more engagement onto Twitter. And so that's why we're predicting a bit of a rebound, positive growth in 2022.
Interesting. Okay. And so this year the ranking is still TikTok, Facebook, Twitter.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about TikTok a bit more, because another metric that you broke out, we had TikTok users, but you broke out TikTok by age and by gender as well. You've already explained kind of what we're measuring when we mean TikTok users. What kind of numbers jumped out to you when you broke out by age and by gender?
Yeah, I mean, I have to talk about the total users before I get into that very quickly.
Yeah,
just from 2019 to 2020, I mean, we saw a jump from 35.6 million users. This number does include kids, by the way. So this is all ages. So from 35 million in 2019 to 66. So not doubled, but nearly. So just incredible growth in 2020. But when we look at ages, I mean, by next year, about 2 out of 3 12 to 17-year-olds will be TikTok users, which is incredible. About 3 and 4 18 to 24-year-old internet users will be TikTok users. I mean, in these age categories, we're seeing almost complete saturation at this point, which is incredible. And just when you look at kind of that core category for TikTok, 12 to 34-year-olds, about 73% of users come from people who are, either kids or teens or, in their 20s or 30s. So it's incredible numbers there.
Yeah, a few things that jumped out to me. So you pointed out the incredible growth last year. So we were saying that basically 11% of the population using TikTok in 2019. That jumped to 20% of the population using it last year. So from 11% to 20% of the US population using TikTok. This year, 24%, then 25%, then 26%. So it is flattening out a little bit going forward, or quite a lot going forward. Over half of TikTok users 18 to 34.
Yeah.
So incredible kind of concentration in that age group. 90%, all of them basically, are between the ages of 12 and 44. And the same is going to be true for the next 4 years. So that is their audience, 12 to 44-year-olds.
Exactly. We have to consider the Gen Z, the generation that some Gen Zers are still kind of not in that age where they have their own smartphones or might not even regularly be going on the internet. So consider as they even age themselves into that behavior, they'll still be kind of going right onto TikTok. It's one of the first apps that they'll download. Because
Gen Z, we're talking, was it like 9 to 24 or something?
I believe so, yeah. It's 97 to 2012. So yeah 9 to 24, exactly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, TikTok is just incredible growth with that young crowd. 18 to 24-year-olds. So 2018, 18 to 24-year-olds, a quarter were using it. And then 3 years later, 3/4.
Yeah.
So almost overnight, over a couple of years, but pretty much overnight in relative terms, like you said, going to almost saturation.
Exactly. It's a must-have app. Must-have.
Yes, absolutely. By gender, the splits, what are we looking at there? More males, more females on TikTok?
Yeah, we tend to see a more female skew with socials, but that's definitely more of the case with TikTok, where 6 in 10 users are female and 4 in 10 are male. So it's pretty much, 60% on the female side. And that's kind of the trend that we're forecasting up until 2025.
Okay, so going forward, same thing, 60-40 split, majority female. Okay, so there's some details in some of the metrics we broke out. But Shalene, as you mentioned at the beginning, 65 top line metrics that we broke out. We've just given them the listeners a handful here of that. What else did we add in Q1? Just a couple of other highlights.
Yeah, so the other metrics that we broke out were Apple Podcasts and music listeners, Pandora and Spotify premium subscribers. And for the ad spending front, we now have ad revenues for new platforms like iHeartMedia, Pluto TV, and Tubi. And we have also expanded our coverage in Latin America for ad spending to include a breakdown of traditional media ad spending in Argentina, Colombia, Peru, and Chile.
Yeah, it's incredible. That caught me completely. I've got TV, print, radio, and out-of-home ad spending for Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile. And that's just one. That's just one of the things that they did. LinkedIn plus Pinterest users for the UK, France, and Germany. Healthcare cloud spending in the US. Walmart search ad revenues in the US. Disney Plus viewers in the UK. TikTok users in Scandinavia, Latin American countries, and a couple of Southeast Asia markets as well. And there's just like 7 of the 65 that they broke out. Just incredible how much you guys churn out in one quarter. What can we expect, Shalene? What kind of new metrics can we expect you guys to be currently working on, because we're already in Q2, and continuing to work on the next couple of months?
Yeah, so this quarter we'll be looking at expanding our coverage of retail and e-commerce to more product categories. And also we'll be taking a deeper look into social commerce and live streaming e-commerce in China.
Excellent. I think maybe you guys are doing too much. All right, I'm just putting it out there. All right, folks. That wraps up the first half of the show. Time now for the halftime report, where we summarize the key takeaways from a lead story in 30 seconds or so before in other news in the second half of the show. So, folks, what are your key takeaways from the first half? Shalene, we'll start with you. What do you want to let the listeners know about what we just talked about?
Yeah, so we broke out 65 top-line metrics in Q1, and for Q2, we'll be including a breakdown of retail by product category for some new markets.
Terrific. Cindy, how about you?
So last year was a pivotal year for D2C e-commerce, and don't you think that this year won't be? So this year will also be an incredibly important year to build on that momentum from last year. And, getting your first customers through the door is the easy part, but, the hard part is going beyond early adopters and increasing the value from your existing customers.
Oscar?
We have to talk about TikTok. TikTok is the most engaging social platform out there. Across users, 4 more minutes a day are spent on TikTok than on Facebook. Incredible, and I'm excited to see what 2021 and beyond brings for the social platform.
Indeed. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I want to say a huge thank you to my guests. They're going to say goodbye at this point. We're going to talk to Peter and Jeremy for in other news, but thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to Shalene.
Thanks for having me, Marcus.
Of course. Thanks for not hiding anymore. We found her.
I'll go back to hiding now.
Thank you to Cindy.
Thanks.
And thank you to Oscar.
Happy to be on. Thanks.
Of course. Thank you guys so much. We'll have another new forecast episode in July, reviewing the new metrics the forecasting team have created in Q2, the ones Shalene just mentioned that they're working on currently. So look out for that episode. We may or may not also get Monica, who heads up the forecasting team, who may be listening in the background, who I may have tried to get for this episode, but she just got by me. But next time, we'll get Monica too. Time now for another news, but first a quick word from our sponsor, Newstar. There's so much happening in marketing these days, but let's be honest, a lot of it is hype. You can join Alison Dietz and Devin de Blasio, the hosts of No Hype, a podcast about truth, science, and the future of marketing, as they cut through the noise and get to what you really need to know. So please share, subscribe, and enjoy the ride at nohype.newstar. That's nohype.neustar. All right, folks, we are back for the second half of the show. We're joined now by Jeremy Goldman, who is our principal analyst who covers everything brand marketing and customer experience.
Great to be with you.
Hey, Jeremy. We're also joined by Peter Varley, who is one of our forecasting analysts.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining me, gents, for In Other News today. Today, in Other News, what should we make of say-through rates, the battle between host-read podcast ads and pre-produced ones, and how many knowledge workers will be using a virtual assistant for their day-to-day work? Story 1. Claire Fanning, VP of Ad Innovation Strategy at Pandora, notes in a piece for Adweek that the company launched a closed beta test for voice ads last summer with folks like KFC, Unilever, and the Home Depot. She continues, quote, "There's a new metric to measure, a say-through rate. STR. Say-through rates, STRs, measure verbal engagement with voice ads, the voice equivalent of the click-through rate, CTR. This gives advertisers the ability to chat with their consumers and gain a real-time understanding of how engaging their content is," close quote. Their initial studies found a few things. One, voice ads had up to 10 times higher STRs than CTRs, say-through rates than click-through rates. Number two, 27% higher purchase intent scores compared to audio ad benchmarks. And number three, nearly 8 points higher ad recall over control. Jeremy, your thoughts on voice ads at this point and also say-through rates?
So first off, I think that we're very much at the beginning of this. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch this develop because consumers have to change their behavior. Not every consumer is willing to engage with an ad immediately. You know, they're used to constant reinforcement of something. So that being said, I think that marketers have to be smart to wade into the waters and start to get familiar with some of the new metrics, because it will be smart in the years ahead to be trying new ad formats, and this is definitely one to watch.
Peter?
Yeah, direct response advertising, performance advertising, these formats have been doing really well over the last couple of years. So to see this this type of audio ad doing well isn't a huge surprise, but then again, it's very early, and you know, part of its popularity and, you know, early signs of success could be largely due to the fact that it's very new and it's a novel experience, and that can, you know, create some excitement, or maybe excitement's too strong of a word, but get people to engage with it.
Some interest.
Some interest, exactly.
Some intrigue.
But on the flip side, you know, people could see this as being a more invasive type of ad with your microphone on and they're gathering your voice data. That could turn a lot of people off. So I think there are also concerns. So wading in slowly and sort of really feeling out the landscape is really important for advertisers as they get into this.
Good points. Pandora found that young people and parents were most likely to engage with voice ads and these say-through rates. Story 2, the battle between host-read podcast ads and pre-produced ones continues. Alyssa Myers of Morning Consult notes that some podcast giants are betting on programmatic ad tech to grow podcast advertising. iHeartMedia bought Triton, Spotify purchased Megaphone, and SiriusXM acquired Stitcher. Crooked Media, on the other hand, does not offer programmatic buying, relying instead on their popular host-read spots, which fetch up to $75,000 for 60 seconds in the network's most popular podcasts like Pod Save America. Brian Kaminsky, Chief Data Officer at iHeartMedia, thinks the continued growth of podcast advertising will be spurred on by a combination of both options. Peter, what are your thoughts on the split between host-read and pre-recorded ads and what that might look like?
There's such a big stigma around programmatic advertising for podcasts, but
right.
I don't really sort of agree with all the negative stigma and negative sentiment around it. You know, I think we need to keep in mind that for smaller budget podcasts, programmatic is so much easier, and it gives them an opportunity to really advertise and get a fair price, you know, because they're competing with these other podcasts that have dedicated ad sales teams that can get these host-read ads and, you know, manage all that. So programmatic advertising is great for small publishers. And then just zooming out a bit, programmatic has ended up dominating pretty much every area of digital advertising. So there's no reason that it's not going to end up dominating audio as well.
Yeah, Jeremy, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree that I think really programmatic is one of those things that it just frankly scales so much better. And that's why, you know, if you're Pod Save America and you can charge that much for something that is host-read, you know, great. You know, you don't have to worry as much about scaling because you're supporting yourself pretty well that way, and it's pretty manageable. But at the same time, you know, like I would say that a lot of it has to do with what do you want And again, there's not necessarily studies and data available for this, but I would think, what is your goal with your advertising? If you're trying to get more affinity for a particular brand and you're trying to align yourself with a popular host, well, logic would dictate that you want that host to read it rather than just have it programmatically inserted after that host's voice. So a lot of it has to do with brand objectives as well in terms of what's the right approach.
Yeah, October. So there was some research about how well host-read ads do versus pre-recorded. October 2020 Morning Consult data showing 52% of podcast listeners, 52% are likely to try products and services recommended to them by their favorite podcast hosts reading an ad. 52% for pre-recorded ads. That share dropped from 52% to 35%. You could say it's quite a lot. You could also say that's not too bad. Millennials and men were also quite a lot more likely to try products and services recommended by both kinds of podcast ads. They over-indexed for both millennials and men. Story 3. Vala Afshar of ZNet notes that Gartner expects consumers and businesses to spend $3.5 billion by the end of this year on what it refers to as virtual personal assistants. VPAs. Gartner predicts that in 2025, in 4 years, half of knowledge workers will use a virtual assistant on a daily basis. Half will use a virtual assistant on a daily basis, up from 2% in 2019. By 2023, so in 2 years, Gartner thinks a quarter of employee interactions will be voice-based communications. So guys, my first reaction to this was, what? That's crazy, speaking to a robot that much. And then I thought about the different use cases for voice, given the good amount of people's day-to-day is communication, email, instant messaging, video chats, speaking in person. And I was thinking, well, how could you use this in your day-to-day? You could say, hey, robot, show me the calendars for myself, Peter, and Jeremy. They appear on the screen. Then I say, hey, robot, schedule a meeting this Monday, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern with me, Peter, and Jeremy. Or, hey, robot, send email to Peter, title, will the Celtics make the playoffs? Body, ? Send. And I mean, talk about efficiencies in your business. We were talking about how difficult it is to schedule just how much time we spend day to day doing that. Jeremy, I'll start with you. What do you make of virtual personal assistants for knowledge workers?
First off, Celtics, 5th seed, probably. That being said,
It's generous.
No, in all seriousness, this is something that has been on the upswing for a while. And one of the things that's interesting about this is I kind of liken it to, you use your microwave, you have a good enough experience, and you keep using it. But what if your microwave kept on getting better all the time? And that's really what we're seeing with all of these AI-enabled chatbots and personal assistants, is that the experience that people are having, generally speaking, to get work done is positive. And they're getting more and more sophisticated. And frankly, anybody in the consumer level who uses, let's say, an Alexa-enabled speaker will find, I said her name, she might talk to me now. But
Everyone's like, sorry, everyone.
What you notice is that there are things that it can do now that it couldn't do a few years ago, right? So if you're going to get deeper and deeper in terms of using voice, and it's a new experience. It's something that people have to get a little bit more comfortable doing in a business environment. But as they do it and they find that their productivity is on the rise, we would expect more and more users to start using these types of tools. Not to mention, as more younger people who are technically astute enter the workforce, you're going to see more openness to using tools like this.
I thought you were going to say there's more young people who don't like talking to humans enter the workforce. Same thing. Peter?
I'm not sure that adoption is going to happen as quickly as that Gartner study or report indicates. I think that we are a little further away than that, but I do agree with what Jeremy's saying. There are a lot of use cases to use virtual assistants in the day-to-day life of someone who's on the computer all day. Now, I think that the way that this is going to catch on is for very specific tasks to roll out sort of one after the other. I think what would turn people off and be overwhelming is if you have this, built-in AI on your speaker or computer, wherever it's integrated, and it can do everything. So you don't even know what to do it for, and you don't know what it's best at. But I think, starting to do a couple simple things like set up a meeting, send an email, just those two things that we all do so many times a day would be enough to really add a lot of value, increase your productivity, and people will really enjoy them. So I think just starting simple with a couple key tasks is all it needs to do to get people to use them and boost productivity. So yeah, it's inevitable, right? That robots will help us work harder and better.
Yeah, right. As you were saying, I mean, in terms of improving productivity and those tasks we do all the time, last summer an Adobe survey found people in the workplace spend an average 3 hours a day. 3 hours a day sending and checking their emails. That'll be over 15 hours a week and amounting to 20 full weeks of the year.
And one thing
hit me.
I'd want to add, that's remarkable. I'd want to add that for a lot of emails, you want to be sure that that email is saying exactly what you want it to say and has the tone that you want it to have. So right. There's also sort of that added layer of complication.
Yeah. Well, when we were talking about social audio, will you be transferring your voice into text people can read, or will you send a tiny little audio message to somebody? Also, the idea of doing this in the office with, hundreds of people all talking at their computers sounds a little bit intense. And as Peter, as you were saying, you use it for very specific actions anyway, and there's still a lot of chatter within the office. But the fact that a lot of people are working from home now, a lot easier to be talking to your computer and not feel embarrassed or kind of awkward about what you're doing. That's all we've got time for this episode. Thank you so much to my guests. Thank you, Jeremy.
Great to be with you again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thanks to Cindy, Oscar, and Shalene, who joined us for the lead story, telling us about what's going on in the forecasting world. Thanks so much to everyone listening. We'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode of the Behind the Numbers ad platform, hosted by Nicole Perrin, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Newstar. Basketball games. That's what we finished. We finished each other's basketball games, Jeremy. No, it's fine. I could have really done with not watching it, to be honest. They were getting blown out early. You saved me a lot of heartache, so I appreciate it.